You're listening to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show with Shirley Yance, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show. I'm so glad that you found me today. I am Shirley, your clinical hypnotherapist, coach, and advocate here in Southern California, and a glitter and rainbow girl going way back. My specialty is actually working with the LGBTQIA community, BDSM, kink, anybody that doesn't really feel like they fit into a traditional setting. And I wouldn't have it any other way. My hope is that we have a little fun today. You might get a little inspiration, might bring a smile to your face, giggle to your heart. So you know how we start this show. And if you're brand new, follow along. First thing we're going to do is just take a nice deep breath. Hold it. And exhale with a smile. Now we're going to do part 2, which is totally my favorite part, as you know. So make sure that you're in that safe place. So you're not driving. You're not heavy machinery. You're not working on a project. We're just going to go with it. You're nice. You're safe. Thank you. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to wiggle those toes. Wiggle your toes. Come on. In your shoes, out of your shoes. I don't care. I'm out of my shoes today because it's a really nice day here. Okay, now wiggle your buns. Come on, squeeze them together. Wiggle your buns. Come on. You can't do this without smiling or telling somebody else. Squeezing your cheeks. Come on, it kind of helps with that too. It's the perfect way to make somebody smile. Now I want you to take one more deep breath. And as you exhale, tell yourself, I got this today. No big deal. We are awesome. Any little tiny affirmation that you need or you want to carry with you for the day or for the week. And if you've got a little extra time, you might want to roll your neck this way and roll your neck this way. And now, in less than 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, you have now released all the muscles and relaxed all the muscles from your toes to your nose and your neck. Isn't that amazing? I love it. If you love my show, and I hope you do, I would love for you to become a Patreon member. Every little bit helps. Buy me a cup of coffee will be great. Trying to keep the show going. So if you just go to the Patreon page and look for Hypno Fairy Godmother, I got lots of really cool perks up there, including a free session. So you might want to click on that. So here we go. Oh, I am so glad that you were with me. I know that's the second time I've said that, but I'm still glad. And today with me, I'm so excited. I have just an amazing guest. She is a New York Times best-selling author of a few different series of urban fantasy books and a personal favorite of mine, Ms. Yasmine Gailnorn. Hello.
Hi, Shirley.
Hi. So, how is it in Washington today?
Well, it's actually kind of clear.
Oh. Well.
But we're headed down to really cold weather soon. So
yeah,
I'm kind of excited about that.
Well, you don't do well in the...
I don't do well in heat, no.
I gotcha. See, we're still in the 80s. I think we had winter for like 2 days.
80s would do me in. 80s is not good for my body.
No. Well, you know what? And it's funny because, as you know, I grew up there. So it took me a while to acclimate my body. So it kind of does that to everybody.
Yeah, I actually grew up in Eastern Washington with really hot summers.
Oh, yeah.
And when I got over here, it was like, oh, thank God. So I'm away from the heat.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is, first of all, I've been reading your books for a really long time. And I love that your characters aren't cookie cutter.
That's
And
because I'm not cookie cutter.
well, exactly.
I don't think I could write a character that was normal.
Well, see, and my whole thing is I work with people that don't really feel like they fit in. And that's the way it is that, and that's kind of what I look for.
That's a big thing that actually a lot of my readers love in my series is I write the misfits that band together and create family of choice to face what's coming in their lives and what they have to deal with, because that's kind of what I had to do.
And a lot of us in this community have a family of choice. And
your sister was one of my first family of choice members when I moved up here to the Seattle area.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how often that I hear people have that family of choice. And when you can actually see or read people that you can identify with, it's amazing.
It makes a huge difference for the reader to give them someone to identify with. And if that's how you normally are in your own life, it's that much easier to write characters like that.
One of the things that I always say is that part of I do what I call my Weeble Kung Fu. So it's, if one thing doesn't work, the next thing will. That's why you have your toolbox. But part of it is becoming the person you wish you would have had growing up. And I see that in kind of a quirky way, but
when I was a kid, I wanted to be what I called the woman with a past, which meant if I would walk into a room, everyone would sort of stop and look at me and think, she's got secrets. She's got something in her past. And for some reason, to me, that translated into being 5'9", long black hair, green eyes, and very curvy. Well, I'm curvier than I'd like to be.
Aren't we all?
I'm 5'3", and I've got bluish black hair right now. So that's about as close as I'm going to get, but I do have an interesting past. So.
Exactly. I understand that because when I go out now, well, even before we had the whole pandemic thing, people would kind of look at me and go, she's got pink hair and tattoos. What does that mean? It means I'm not traditional. So you get what you get.
Yeah. I half the time I'm covered with tattoos.
Right.
And half
you're
the time,
fabulous.
If I am out and people are looking at me, I'm just like, I wonder why they're staring at me. And then it's like, oh, that's right, the tattoos.
You know what? I just like to smile and wave. And what's funny is that, especially with the pink hair, little kids will get all excited and wave to me. And it's like their parents are going, don't look at it. Don't look at it. don't give them any ideas. I've
actually had women in their 80s come up to me and say, I wish I'd had the courage when I was your age.
I'm like, do it now.
Yeah, I've told them that. It's like, it's never too late. And if you're 80, who the hell cares whether you get a tattoo? I mean, it's like, why do you care at that point?
Exactly. Just do what makes you happy. Be you. And that's the nice thing is that, for people, your readers and stuff, it feels like it just accumulates. Now, I know that you have at least 4 series going on right now.
Well, I've actually got a total of about 8 or 9 series.
Holy moly.
Currently, the current ones, let me see, the Wild Hunt series is current. The Moonshadow Bay series is current. And I have got several that I'm adding on to when I can. Whisper Hollow is somewhat current, but I'm in a fight for a couple of my rights from my ex-publisher.
Okay.
And then I've got a bunch that I finished or I put on hold until I decide that they're viable to go forward with.
So how do you keep your series straight? I'm amazed.
I'll show you here.
Please do.
This
Haha.
is my series Bible. I've got one for each series, and it is like that.
Wow. Holy moly.
With notes. Every time I finish a book, and my editor sends me style sheets, which a style sheet, it has a list of names, of place names, of character names. It has lists of vocabulary that's not in the dictionary, stuff like that. Every time I get a style sheet back from my editor when I finish a book, I go through and I update the series Bible by adding in everything I need to, and by adding in the pertinent plot points that happened in the last book. And then it just keeps building every time.
So do you have them in rotation? Or when an idea hits you, do you just go, oh, this one just got moved forward?
I am, now that I'm indie, I was traditional publishing for 20 years. I started out in small press, moved to New York.
One of your writing assistants is walking through.
Yes. Yes, Haley. All right, Haley.
Hello.
She helps me so much. She really does. She tries. When I was in traditional publishing, I had to write what was scheduled, what was scheduled and what was to contract. When I went indie, I'm lucky enough that I'm business savvy, that I recognize I needed to start several new series, so I didn't have ones that were partially still in trad and partially indie, because you can't promote the way you need to if you've got some books tied up with a publisher.
Okay.
So I started several new series, and then I started basing it on how well they did, because I pay the mortgage. It's like, this is a job. This is a career.
Exactly.
It's not a hobby. It hasn't been for many years, over 25 years. And so I make good business decisions based on what sells the best.
Okay. Well,
and since I love writing all of my books, it's,
you just kind of go with, I like this one. Looks like other people like this one.
Yeah. So
let's go with it.
I make a business plan at the beginning of the year, or rather at the very end of the year for the next year. And from there, if things drastically shift, I'll change.
Okay.
But I work in quarter segments. I work on a quarter segment, 3 months at a time. And at the end of that 3 months, I look at what's happened, look at where I'm at, adjust for the next quarter, and move on to the next quarter.
As an indie writer, that's your prerogative now.
Yes.
Not anyone else's, which is great.
Yeah.
It kind of opens it up a little bit more.
It opens it up so much. I'm grateful to New York for getting me where I'm at, or at least where it got me. But there are glass ceilings in New York, and you can only go as far as they let you. And I'm very prolific. I can write fast. I write tight. After all these years, I know what I'm doing. And they would only let me write 3 books a year. And honestly, if you're living on advances, that's, even if you're getting decent advances after all the cuts that come out for taxes and agents and everything.
Right.
Yeah. Now I control my career and financial situation much better. I can write more if I need to make, it's like, oh, I need to make more. I better
crank one of these babies.
If I'm suddenly going, that book didn't do so well, I need to write in a different series, I can switch to that for the next one.
So during the pandemic that we're going through right now, I know that you worked from home before, but has this pandemic kind of changed the way you handle like mental health how you're doing to, we all need to relax a little bit. What do
I
you
don't
do
relax.
you don't relax?
I love my work. I'm a workaholic. I get very antsy if I take more than a day off. I don't know
Okay.
what to do with myself. And it's like, okay. And I have a condition called mast cell activation disorder. It's chronic illness. Basically, the mast cells, which trigger when you run into allergic allergens,
Mm-hmm.
they think everything is trying to kill me. So
Oh,
I have allergic reactions to anything and everything, depending on the day. And it can go anywhere from just a mild discomfort to anaphylaxis. I, for the past 5 years, have not even been able to walk into a restaurant.
wow.
I have,
So
yeah, I can't.
with the pandemic, it didn't affect a whole lot about what you couldn't
No,
do because you've kind of been stuck.
yeah. The best place if I want to go out is when the sun is not shining because heat and sunlight can trigger reactions.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
So go out to a park and sit in the park for a while. You know?
So is that kind of what you do to kind of keep your mental health in check?
There's that. I also have a writing. She's not a life coach, but she's not a writing coach in as far as talking about the actual work, but how I approach the work
Mm-hmm.
and how I approach the business and stuff. So I've got a coach I meet with once a month.
That's great.
She's so helpful.
And I think everybody, no matter what they're doing, to have that person that you can talk to, that person that you can run stuff past.
Yeah.
It's not even that you're going, tell me what to do. You're just like, I need to get this out. You're my favorite person to do that. And you won't lie to me. You're going to give me the truth when I tell you that. And I think that's important in whatever we do.
And also, I belong to a couple online groups of authors. And one is a group of mostly indie, some hybrid, some who were trad and now are now indie, some who are both.
Right.
And there's about 38 of us in that group. And about 10 of us since July have been meeting on Zoom every single day for 2 hours. And we check in, state our goals, go off and write for half an hour, check in, go off.
That's great because
it has saved our necks.
My big thing with talking to people is, even though, and I know that, you're married, so you're not alone, but to check in with other people, make sure that you have somebody that you can talk to, that maybe makes you accountable, that you're not sitting secluded.
That's the thing. It's an accountability thing. And also we've started doing marketing meetings and meetings.
Oh, might have to sneak in on one of those.
It's been very, very helpful.
I love that, because that's actually what I tell people. It's like, online, you can find a group for anything.
Yeah. And
take advantage of it. This is fabulous, because think of when you started, how much help it would have been to have.
It would have been, except I'll tell you one thing, traditional publishing does not encourage authors to talk to each other.
That's kind of strange.
No, because they don't want you discussing your advances. They don't want you feeling comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
They keep you on edge so they can keep you under control.
So then it's the being an independent is the best thing for you. I've been an independent contractor forever, and it means that I set my terms, kind of like what you said before. You set your terms, you set everything. That's kind of what, when you work for yourself, you find pluses and minuses everywhere. You know who to back away from, who to bring in.
When I started actually professionally writing, I've written since I was 3 years old. I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was 3. But since I since I went professional, from the first time I got my first contract, that was 1996. I just turned 60.
I know. Happy birthday. Belated happy birthday.
And honestly, back then, there was no way to communicate with people other than writing letters. You know, I'm from the day where we started out when you sent in chapters via the mail, and you waited for months to see if it would come back. And
now it's like, here you go.
How I got into professional publishing was lying my way in.
You know what? Fake it till you make it, hon.
Well, you know, I sent the publisher. I had this. Friends kept telling me you should teach, or you should write a book because you teach classes on magic and witchcraft. You teach about the tarot. You know, you've been in the craft for years. You should write books on it. So I decided that I would see if one of the publishers who specialized in magical how-to books would be interested. I wrote them a letter saying, I have a manuscript of guided meditations about the Wheel of the Year. I didn't. I had about 2 or 3 meditations written, but it took months to hear back then, you know. I figured it'd be 5 months at least before I'd hear. I'd have the book written by then. 2 weeks later, I get a letter from them going, we'd like to see the manuscript.
Whoopsie.
I wrote them a letter back. I waited another 2 weeks, wrote them a letter back saying, my printer is in the shop, and as soon as it's fixed, I will send you the manuscript. And then I wrote 14
fabulous.
hours a day, every single day. And I got it done in about 4 more weeks. And I tidied it up as much as I could, and I sent it off, and they bought it. And that's how I got it.
That's amazing. That you know, that it worked for one thing, because I know that, you know, some of the writing that I've done, even though it's totally different genre, you know, it still seems like it takes forever and ever for them to get back to you. So that was just like, hey, here I am.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know that your spirituality is a big part of your writing. Does that cause kickbacks, or is that a plus?
Actually, I've never hid who I am. I've been a witch since 1980. Been in the craft since then. And since I wrote magical how-to books that got published before my fiction got published, honestly, it would be hard to hide who I was because I had a track record. And I don't do well on hiding. I figure that if people know who I am up front, they know who they're dealing with.
Yes. So,
you know, they know that right up front who I am, what I stand for. And the only time I've gotten, actually, one of the only times I've gotten pushback from readers is one reader got really pissed at me when I put a banner on my website saying, go vote. I didn't say go vote for so-and-so.
Right.
Said, go vote. And she was like, I'm sending all your books back to the store. I'm returning them. And I'm just like, okay.
I would have just went, bye-bye. You know, I mean, it's hard to hear that from a fan, but still,
well,
it's your website. It's your decision.
Yeah.
And people should agree with it.
And honestly, for me, there are some authors, artists, actors who I will not support because of their political beliefs or religious beliefs. Because they're so hardcore, they're so alien to what I stand for that I can't support them. But for the most part, if there are differences, usually it doesn't matter that much. The art's what matters. It's only when it gets really extreme that I care. And I think a lot of my readers are like that.
Mm-hmm.
They know who I am. They know what my beliefs are. They know what I stand for. If it's not too alien to what they feel, they don't mind.
Right. Well, I mean, I tell people right at the beginning, if you see me and you listen to the beginning of my show, you know who I am. Yeah. You know, when a client calls me after they've looked at my website, you definitely know who I am. And like you said, it's important for them to just know. So it's not a shock that I'm this way and that I'm open and, and I deal with these communities, that I'm part of this community. So I've had people that I actually have had people write me or text me and say that, my website was offensive because it's got a great big old rainbow on it. Then maybe you're not
not your client.
They're not my client. And they're not your reader.
Yeah, you cannot write for everybody. You cannot please everybody in life. If you try to please everyone, you will please no one.
Exactly.
So you pick your audience, you focus on that audience, and you work within those parameters.
Now, I have a part of what I like to call nourishing your soul. Doing things to nourish your soul. What do you do that you would say nourishes your soul? I'm
a media junkie. I love TV. I love movies. I love video games. I love music. I absolutely am a audiophile. So those activities replenish me. Playing with the cats. I text with my friends a lot. It's like I'm one of those people who uses my phone more than I use probably any other appliance. I'm glued to my phone. It's with me all the time. Except if I'm in ritual, and then it stays out.
Right.
But
so
meditation, I'm not a quiet person, if that makes sense. I'm not a loud person, but the activities around me when I'm playing are not quiet ones.
Okay.
Used to be cooking, but now I have such a limited diet.
Right.
I have so few things in the house, that's kind of gone by the wayside.
But you still have things that you do for you. And that's what the important part is. It's doing stuff for you.
Makeup. I love makeup. I can spend half an hour happily just playing with makeup.
That's great. Now, do you ever do any tutorials for that? I have listeners that love makeup tutorials.
I actually have had readers ask me to do that, but I have a YouTube channel. I'm finding that the videos that get the most response.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I do a series called Living Disabled because my husband is disabled. And we have started a series where we're talking about living with chronic illness and disability and how to adapt with that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I also do not tutorials, but discussions on intuitive writing, because I do not plot my books. I sit down, I have a one-page synopsis that I know is, the encapsulation of the book. And I start from there and I write the book.
Now, when I start, I'm more children's books, but when I start writing, I've gone through where, my partner will go, well, what's this character's name? And I'm like, I don't know. It hasn't told me yet. Do you write like that too?
Yeah. Basically.
It's an interesting thing because you're writing and it's like, I don't know what their name is yet. I'll get back to that.
I call it intuitive writing. And I'm doing actually a series on my YouTube channel about intuitive writing and ways to approach it, ways to deal. Like I just put up a video on self-sabotage and how we self-sabotage ourselves and our writing, things like that.
We call it kind of the imposter syndrome.
There's that. And there's also a lot of fears.
Yes.
One of the things I see in especially newer writers, because, beginning writers or writers who haven't fully found their voice yet,
mm-hmm.
A lot of times they're almost as terrified of success as they are of failure.
Absolutely.
Because success means you've got to do it again.
Yes, and it's really scary. The first time I pushed the send button on a children's book, on one of, I almost hyperventilated. Do you still get that
No,
stomach rumble?
I've got like 75 books out or so.
Oh, okay. So you don't get that mumble rumble.
I don't get that, but I always get that sort of like, well, they like this one. Well, they like this one. Because, I don't pull punches in my books. Sometimes characters get hurt. Sometimes characters die. Sometimes, I may do something that readers probably don't want me to do, but that needs to happen for the story.
Right.
So there's always that sense of, okay, what are they going to think about this?
Exactly. It's like, okay. So, I'm glad that when you write that you don't feel like you have to keep a traditional pattern, like everybody lives at the end or things like that.
Realistic. And my books, even though they are set in fantasy settings or, contemporary parallel worlds, they are realistic enough to make people feel like they're there.
So the label that your books tend to go under is urban fantasy. How do you describe urban fantasy? So people that may not know.
There's I write 4 main genres.
Okay.
Urban fantasy, paranormal romance, paranormal women's fiction, and paranormal mystery. And they're usually all kind of a connection, combination of those.
Okay.
Urban fantasy, think Buffy.
Okay.
You've got the Scooby Gang set in an urban setting, fighting against the big bats.
Okay.
Paranormal romance, I don't write that quite as much because that's heavy on the romance. And while I really enjoy romance, I have a lot of romance writers who, for friends, I respect the genre, but I can't write focusing on the romance.
Okay.
But there's elements of romance in my worlds. There's
yes.
a lot of, some of the books are hot and heavy, some are less, but there's usually some element of romance in my books. Mystery, there's always an element of mystery in my books. There's always something to be solved, something to figure out. And then the paranormal women's fiction is a relatively new genre, and I've stepped into it, and that is dealing with older heroines. So my heroines are in their 40s in this series. And again, that's, we have vampires, we have all sorts of things, but the heroines are not they're not quite able to run out there and kick ass as much as the urban fantasy heroines. And they have to learn to deal with that,
Right. Because and how has that gone over writing for the more crone people?
Actually, I have, my readership is highly, it tends to be women between about 25 to 70 and heavily from like 30 on. And I also have a very large gay readership.
Well, and your characters aren't all straight cookie cutter characters. Yeah. You have characters that are part of all the communities.
That's because I'm bi.
So you don't have a problem putting that in. And it's nice to read stuff where you can identify.
And yet I don't want to write something just focusing on this character is gay.
Exactly.
It's like, it's just part of life. It's part of their life,
And that's also part of, writing your truth.
Yeah. I had a character, she had 3 husbands,
That's a little extreme.
I did. But one was a dragon, one was a fox shifter, and one was one of the dark fae. So
that's quite the variety.
Yes. She never failed to have plenty of attention. And then I've had characters, one of my main, I actually found out I was Groundbreaker. An editor years ago told me that I had broken ground because my fiction was considered almost mainstream because it went out to all the big markets and stuff and sold on a larger level. But the main character she was bi, but she was mostly lesbian. And that, when I didn't close the door on her, that had not been done in the mainstream writing.
Wow.
So I didn't know that. I was just writing.
You're just writing what you feel.
Yeah.
Not realizing or worrying, am I writing something that's going to offend somebody?
Actually, my editor at that time, I remember when I wrote the first book with that character in it, my editor emailed me and she said, I want you to think about this for a minute. You will probably lose readers with this book. I'm not telling you not to do it, but I'm making you aware you will lose some readers. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to treat this sister any different than her other sisters. They get their bedroom door scenes open. She's getting hers. And I actually gained readers. I lost some women were more upset about a lesbian sex scene than they were about decapitation.
Isn't that crazy?
I was like, what is wrong with you people?
Exactly. You're like, really? You can decapitate people.
Yeah.
But don't make two girls kiss. That just wigs me out.
Yeah. So,
and
I told her that's okay. It's like, I am not skimping on this. I am not pulling the curtain.
True to self.
And I had interviewed on another, it was a LGBT, radio show.
Okay.
And they told me at that point that the hosts that there had been rumors that there was going to be a gay, main character, lesbian main character in my books. They had seen hints of it and they were waiting to see. And it was like, yes, she did it. Okay, because the rumor mills.
We get so excited. You get so excited because, for the longest time, whether it was TV or books or whatever, we would actually somehow make a character lesbian or gay. And, it wasn't that it was said and it may not ever have been real, but anybody you can identify with.
Sort and now coding. You could see almost a coding in there that, yeah.
Right. And you look for that and go, there it is. I've got that person. Now it's a lot easier, but there's still kickback.
Yeah, there is. Oh, there is. And honestly, it's like, too bad. I don't care. I do what I want with my books.
And you always should. So on your YouTube, do you have what are the names of your channel so people can find you?
Just Yasmine Gailnorn. I think official Yasmine Gailnorn.
Okay, so everything's on the same.
Yeah. You can find it all on my website. You can find it on my website.
What would we do without websites? They're like the yellow pages.
And you should always keep your website updated constantly. Do not rely on the social media sites for that because that's not your real estate. You don't own that real estate. You only borrow it. So make sure if you are an author, any kind of artist, keep a website that you have control over.
That's the greatest advice because once you get farther behind and then it's like, okay, I'll do it next week. You can't do that. That, like you said, that's just as important or more important than advertising on social media.
I have friends on Facebook who, for some glitch or some reason, their pages have been pulled. Without warning. And they may get them back or they might not. Some of them have not gotten their pages back. And they have no clue why they got pulled. And, if you rely on another site to host your information and that goes down the tube, you're out of luck.
Right, because you need to make sure that if You know, like you said, if your site goes down, or if your Facebook or Twitter or whatever gets locked up, your website is your home.
And you can always put a note on your website. My
Right.
Facebook page is down. My Twitter is down. You know.
Exactly. Which is so important. You know, and I love that you know, that you do keep that up, and you understand and you follow through with the importance.
Or you've got to be a good business person, especially if you are an indie author. I mean, you should be if you are a trad author as well, but you've got to learn the business side. You can't just say, it's art, I'm just making art, because if you rely on your income at all, and even if you don't, the control over your work, you need to know what you're doing.
And that's the one thing that, like, when I went to hypnotherapy school or any type of trade school, they'll actually teach you everything you need to know except the business side. Or you take one class in business and then they just, like, you're just thrown to the wolves. So knowing the business side and following with the business side for a lot of independent artists, no matter what your art is, knowing the business side and staying up to date with the business side, not giving it to somebody, not giving it over to someone.
Exactly.
They can help you, but
I have assistants and they help with social media and everything else, but I know the different aspects of my business.
Well, that's part of keeping control of what you do. One of the other things that I like to have people do is kind of throw in a little bit of meditation every day or affirmation. How do you feel about things like that?
My monitors here are covered with, I guess you'd call them aspirations.
Well, could be.
And affirmations. Like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. The more you earn, the more you can contribute. Remember your strengths. If you aren't in the arena getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. And that's, I love that. Critics.
I love that one.
I heard that on a I think Brene Brown. I think that's a quote from her. And then, it's like, I am, I can, I will.
I have these dice that I made for people that I've started marketing and stuff, and you roll them like regular dice and they have 2 affirmations come up, whatever it is on the dice. And that's if you can't come up with affirmations, there you go. And you just start the day. But I think that having the Post-it notes on your monitor, or I tell people, if write it down and stick it on your mirror in your bathroom. Start every project in a positive note. Because if you dread it, then everybody's going to know that you don't like it. And I think that would be with writing too. If you have to write something that you're forced to write, it's going to show, don't you think?
Yeah, it does. I had a short-lived series that way with my ex-publisher. 3 books, non-paranormal. I don't do well on non-paranormal. I'm all about paranormal. And it was a mystery series, but accepting the contract sort of helped cement me in with them, and that's what I was trying to do at that time. So I was like, okay. Halfway through the first book, I was just like, oh my God, I have to write 2.5 more books in this world. And it's not that I don't like the characters or anything. It's just that I'm bored.
Right.
I can't bring in a ghost. I can't bring in this. I can't bring in that. And so the minute the 3rd book was done, it was like, that's done. That series is done. I paid my dues on that one.
And I kind of feel like once you make that decision, you never do it twice.
No. And hopefully you never have to do it twice.
Right. And I, because I like to tell people, be excited about what you do and don't have regrets. I mean, if you did it because you had to do it, then okay, fine. But don't dwell on it.
Yeah, you can't dwell on it. I mean, one of my few regrets that I do have, but there's nothing I can do about it now. And at this point, it doesn't matter that much. When I was with my ex, he was very abusive. And he used to tell me, if you succeed as an author, I'll have to leave you. And I threw away 2 book manuscripts and a bunch of short stories trying to save that. Trying to save that marriage. I regret doing that simply because I regret the space I was in where I would actually do that. And it's like,
obviously you had the strength, the inner strength to move on. And I know that you have a great relationship now with Sam.
28 years this year.
Hi, that's fabulous.
Whirlwind romance. Got together. I moved in with him the first night we actually expressed interest in each other.
Wow.
He proposed 2 months later, and we got married on Beltane the next year. And that's why I tell people who question the whirlwind romances in my books, it's like, I lived it. It's my truth. So, yeah. So if people want to find you, we've already gone over the website and the other thing. Are you on any other social media? I do have, YouTube. I have a Patreon page.
Good.
Find that listed on my website as well. I have a Facebook group for readers. I do have a Facebook author page. I don't do much there, but I have a Facebook group for readers. You have to answer some questions to get in, so we know you're not a spammer. It's called the Moonstalkers.
I must have answered the questions right because I got in.
And then I have my Twitter. I will warn people, I am very vocal about politics on Twitter. I have no hesitation about ranting and raving on Twitter.
But if,
so just know, if you go to my Twitter, you will probably see me yelling and curse. I curse like a trucker.
Love it.
Just expect that.
I'm right there with you. So, yeah, I just, we want people to be able to find you if they don't, if they didn't know where to find you. So, yeah, this has been great. Yay.
I enjoyed this. It's been fun.
It's always fun to, have different people on to show listeners that, you can do it. It may not be easy. It's not going to be, immediately. Whatever you do, you have to work for.
You have to work for it.
But you have to love it.
If you don't work hard, nobody else is going to do it for you.
Exactly. So I want to thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you.
And I will definitely talk to you soon.
I will talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So anybody that wants to rehear the show, or if you missed anything, you can find that also on my website and my webpage on Facebook, which is Hypno Fairy Godmother. I repost everything because I want you to be able to catch up. If you need to, you missed something for your toolbox, or you need a meditation or an affirmation. So always take note of your mental state. It's very important. And if you're feeling in need, find somebody to talk to. If you need to talk to somebody, like Yasmine said, vent it out. You got to have someplace to do that. Take note of your mental space. Get out, smile. Even though we're under a pandemic, doesn't mean a thing. Be cautious, but don't be secluded. That's my big thing. So if you have any questions or any comments, I would love to hear it. Just email me at hypnofairygodmother@yahoo.com. So now, one last time, make sure you're in a safe space. I hope you enjoyed today. Take a great big deep breath one more time. Hold it. Exhale with a great big smile. Thanks for tuning in today, and tell your friends about the show. You never know who's going to show up on my crazy show. Always remember to smile at people because they'll wonder what you're up to. And please, please have a wonderful day, and I will see you next week.
You're listening to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show with Shirley Yance, only on LA Talk Radio.